Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're so glad you're here. On our webinar today is about supporting students with intellectual disabilities with their transition to post-secondary. So to get started today, we want to go over a little bit of housekeeping. So during the presentation, feel free to use the chat to communicate directly with the panelists. And we will also take questions in the Q&A. So we can't see or hear you today. This is a webinar in webinar mode, but we will be monitoring all of those questions. So to get started today, we wanted to launch a poll. So Chelsea, if we're going to launch this poll. So the question is, how many colleges and universities across the United States offer programs with students with intellectual disabilities? Right. So we have got responses coming in. Give you a few more minutes a few more seconds to do that. All right. So we have about 29% of y'all said 450. About 43% of you said 315. And about 29% of you said 150. So the actual number that we put in the poll was 315, but in chatting with our presenter prior to this, she said it's a few more actually now than 315. So she's going to give y'all information about that during the presentation. So thank y'all for participating in that poll. All right. So we're going to move on here. So today, we want to welcome you, as I said earlier, to the webinar. And I am Shannon Grimsley, the Assistant Director of External Training and Partnerships for the Woodward Hines Education Foundation and the Get to College program. We are recording today's session and will send a link to anyone who is registered. For those watching the recording, today's date is January the 14th, 2025, and the material in this webinar is current through the 24-25 school year. All right, so today we will be presenting, as I said earlier, our topic today is supporting students with intellectual disabilities with the transition to post-secondary. We will have our presenter for that, and then we'll go over some follow-up information at the end to give you information about other training presentations and seminars that we will be holding throughout the year, the rest of the year, I guess that is. All right, so we will share a little background now on Get to College and a few logistics about the webinar before we get started today. Get to College is a nonprofit program of the Woodward Hines Education Foundation. We have 3 centers in Mississippi, one in Jackson, Ocean Springs, and South Haven, and we help parents, students, and high school counselors with all aspects of planning, college planning, and financial aid, and all of our services are free. In our centers, we offer personalized college counseling appointments where we can help students know when to apply for admission and scholarships, help fill out their FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, or advise on essay writing and interview skills. As we mentioned earlier, during the webinar, we cannot see or hear you, but we do ask that you ask us questions through instant message or the Q&A at any time. My colleague, Chelsea Williams, will be monitoring the Q&A, and she will ask these questions of the presenter during the actual presentation, but we'll also have time for live Q&A with the presenter at the end. But like I said, feel free to message us your questions at any time. I would now like to introduce our guest speaker for the day. Our guest speaker today is Kate Weir. Kate is a program director at the Institute for Community Inclusion, University of Massachusetts in Boston. She currently directs the ThinkCollege National Coordinating Center, the NCC, funded by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Postsecondary Education, and this is a position that she has held since 2010. The NCC provides support, coordination, training, and evaluation services for the transition and post-secondary education program for students with intellectual disabilities, as well as training and technical assistance to existing and developing college programs for students with intellectual disability, families, students, and educators. Kate has worked in the field of post-secondary education for students with intellectual disability for over 20 years. She is the proud recipient of the 2021 George G. Jensen National Leadership Award, recognizing her national leadership in the field of inclusive post-secondary education. Kate's expertise includes development and improvement of college programs for students with intellectual disability, program standards for accreditation, person-centered planning, and statewide planning for inclusive post-secondary education initiatives. Kate, I will now turn the presentation over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And I'm very happy to be here today with everybody to talk to you about college for students with intellectual disability.
Did my presentation go away, Kate?
It did not.
I think.
I'll just wait for the slideshow. There we go. So we can move to the next slide where I will and actually just use that to say hello. But this, I don't really need to say much more because I was just kindly introduced with a great presentation from Shannon. But I will let you know that I am sort of a Southerner, even though I work for UMass Boston. I'm currently presenting from my home in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I work remotely for the university. And our center, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it in just a moment. But let's first just take a look at the learning objectives for the session so you could get a sense of where I'm going to try to take you. And as Shannon mentioned, I'm happy to take questions as we go through. But my goal at the end of the session is that you know about ThinkCollege or perhaps know a little bit more about it or are reminded if it's something that you've heard about before. So I want to tell you a little bit about ThinkCollege and our resources related to college for students with intellectual disability. I'm going to explain, in case it is relatively new to you, what a college program for students with intellectual disability is. And I'll let you know about our national directory of programs and share a little bit about how to find that directory, how to use that directory, and certainly how to share that, most importantly, with families and students who are interested in going on to college. And I'm going to wrap up with some tips, beginning to get people to thinking about how you can support families and schools to help prepare students for college. This group of students with intellectual disability are sometimes not considered as people who might be going on to college. So I think it's really important for us to be very intentional about changing that perspective and offering opportunities for students to get ready for college like we do for other students. So those are my goals for the session that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And just to let you know a little bit more about the center that I run, as mentioned, we have been funded by the U.S. Department of Education since 2010, and we provide training and technical assistance, as well as we also conduct research into the outcomes of these students who are going on to college. But we're really interested in working with any college or university who wants to establish or improve a college opportunity, a college program for students with intellectual disability. And we also provide information to educators, families, and students related to post-secondary education options. Our primary mode of dissemination is our website. So if this is a topic that you're interested in, I very much encourage you to visit our website, thinkcollege.net. So, what is an inclusive post-secondary education program? So, we utilize this term in our field. Sometimes you'll even hear people using the acronym IPSE, IPSE programs, IPSE. Um, or more descriptively, college and university programs for students with intellectual disability. But that's kind of a mouthful. So we often do refer back to this inclusive post-secondary education programs. So what are these programs? And the reason I think it's really important to start here is to understand a couple of things. First, that these programs are very well-rounded, very comprehensive learning opportunities for young adults with intellectual disability, and that they are, in many ways, these students are having a very typical college education experience, but in some ways it is unique to them. And that is because of the unique needs that these students may have when they are in college. So when a student attends an inclusive post-secondary education program, they are involved in taking college courses, they are involved in internships and work study. They may have paid jobs either on or off campus. They belong to campus organizations and participate in campus life. And they also learn to live more independently through direct instruction, as well as just the opportunity to perhaps live on campus and become more independent that way. So that's the experience that students can expect to have when they attend one of these programs. And then I thought, well, let's be clear about what we mean by a student with an intellectual disability. So, as I had mentioned, these are often students who are not typically expected to attend college. They may be students who are in, they will be students who are in special education. They're students who may be, and to be honest, I don't know exactly what Mississippi does, but they may be in an alternate diploma track. Or an IEP diploma, that sort of thing. Um, and so that may seem like, well, those students don't have the correct diploma to go on to college. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about in a minute about how a pathway has been established for these students. So one of the most important things is to begin to think about these students as potential college students, as we do for many, many other students in our high schools. These students have cognitive impairment, and so this is the official definition in the Higher Education Opportunity Act. So they have significant limitations in intellectual and cognitive functioning, as well as adaptive behavior, and they have been eligible for special education under IDEA. So a common type of intellectual disability, for instance, might be Down syndrome. Those are the kinds of students that we're talking about. So I think it's important. You guys work with a lot of different kinds of students who come with a lot of gifts and perhaps some challenges when it comes to continuing their education in college. And the same is true of these students as well. So these are their specific, perhaps, challenges that they might need support with as they go on to college. The other thing that's and really one of the main reasons why this group of students with intellectual disability have been sort of categorically excluded from post-secondary education for all but the last 20 years or so, because they were just there were so many barriers at the door of post-secondary education that's made it seem kind of impossible for these students to continue their education after high school. There were placement tests, perhaps lengthy essays. You needed to meet all the requirements to be able to pursue a degree program at a college or university. And as a person with a disability, you might receive reasonable accommodations. But for students with intellectual disability, accommodations alone may be insufficient. Although they're very helpful, they may be insufficient. So what was happening, and this was my experience working with students with disabilities at a college as a disability services provider, which I was at one time in my career, These students may come to college, particularly if I was at a community college, so they might come in, try to take classes, but would really either get stuck in some pre-college reading and math courses and not allowed to really take any college courses, um, or they may just really, really struggle without the support that they needed to be successful and end up, failing out. So while they were maybe accessing it, they just didn't have the right levels of support to really be successful. So what has been established really, well, it was established back in 2008 by the Higher Education Act, is an alternative pathway into college for these students. So for these students, these programs offer individualized support. They offer an opportunity to pursue a credential that might not be a bachelor's degree or an associate degree, but it is a meaningful credential offered by the program. There's a real focus in these programs as well on employment. Students going to college with the real desire to work after college in a competitive employment position. So you may know that people with intellectual disability in the community generally really struggle to be employed in competitive employment, and that just means a real job for at least minimum wage. Those individuals historically, nationally, have about an employment rate of about 19%. And what we're finding with students who go to these programs, who can complete a program with this focus on employment, they are on average about 65% of those students graduate with a paid job at least minimum wage. So the outcomes are very, very good for students, and partly, in large part, because of that strong focus that these programs will have. And they also, these programs are individualized both on the support level and also on what the student will actually study. They're based on a person-centered plan, meaning the individual will talk about what they want to do for a job, what careers they're interested in, and then a course of study or a curriculum is put together that focuses on experiences and classes that prepare them for that specific career goal that they have. So that alternative pathway has had the effect of opening the doors to college for students with intellectual disability by utilizing an alternative pathway in, but then once they're in college, we really want them, and these programs are designed to offer them a very typical undergraduate experience. And so they really become college students once they're in the door. So to give you a sense of the scope of this right now, and I mentioned 2008 as a year that the Higher Education Act was reauthorized. And in that reauthorization, they created this pathway for students with intellectual disability. Um, and that has made a huge difference. I was doing this work and working individually with families and students who wanted to go to college since the early 2000s. But 2008 and the Higher Education Act really cemented this as something that was going to happen nationally, that had some national recognition and some funding behind it as well. That's what ended up funding the National Coordinating Center that I direct. So that has made a huge difference in terms of the growth in programs. Back in the early 2000s, when I was first looking at this, we might find a handful of colleges and universities, maybe 20, 25, we estimated back in early 2000, that had some efforts to educate individuals with intellectual disability. And now, as you mentioned, Shannon found the number 315. That number actually changes quite frequently, which we're delighted to see as these opportunities continue to grow. And currently, and I'm going to share a map about this in just a moment, currently there are 355 colleges and universities that offer opportunities for students with intellectual disability all over the country. But as Mississippians, you'll be glad to know a real strong number, the greatest number of these programs regionally are in the Southeast. So there's a rich array of resources in the Southeast, currently two in the state of Mississippi. So these programs, as I mentioned earlier, there's about 8,000 students with intellectual disability who are attending these programs each year. They do tend to be smaller programs so that that support can be provided in an individualized way. They offer a non-degree credential. So a certificate, they are certificate or programs as opposed to degree programs. They take college credits. They may take them for credit, or they also may audit the course, meaning they would participate to the extent that they can, and then that they could have some modifications to that course requirements because they're not earning college credit. Um, Employment, as I mentioned, a lot of employment supports are provided, but students are supported to have a traditional college student experience. Many of the programs are on residential campuses, so campuses that offer dorms and dorm living, and those students live in the dorms alongside their peers without disability and participate. They have student IDs. They can go to every event and belong to the clubs and go to the sporting events. And many of the campuses, students have access to Greek life, student government, all of everything that's available to typically matriculating or degree seeking students. These students have access to as well, which is really important and something that we work hard at within college to make sure that these programs are established that way so that they're inclusive and students, for all intents and purposes, are participating and on campus and are just like every other student. Why, in their day to day. It's really important, and that they're not having a segregated or separate experience. And those programs, as I said, do provide those additional supports. So here's where we are right now. And see what I said? This map is from November of 2024, and it has the number 353. But if you look at our website today, it says 355. So we are constantly adding opportunities, which is very exciting. So if you look at this map, you can see, as I said, the two programs in Mississippi, which is Mississippi State and Southern Mississippi currently have programs. The one at Mississippi State has been around for quite a while. And so some of you may be familiar with that. Southern's program is relatively new. But there's been an investment in these colleges, and the growth in the Southeast has been really nice to see. And so you can see that throughout your area, there are quite a number of programs. Florida and North Carolina, you see, have high numbers right now. And that's due in large part to a fairly significant state investment in the growth of these programs. And so that has had a strong impact in North Carolina and Florida right now. So that's where the programs are. And particularly, I know that as a college going support program, you're really interested in students knowing about and being able to access financial aid. So about a little less than half of these programs do offer access to some types of federal financial aid. And I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later in the presentation. So just to summarize and to clarify what it is we're talking about with these programs, I really think it's just so important for us, for those of you working with young people who might be considering what they're doing after high school, to understand that students with intellectual disability who have the desire and interest, first of all, they probably need to know it's even possible before they can even start dreaming about it. So it's so important for educators like yourselves to know about it yourselves so that you can share this information. Not every student, with or without disability, sees college as their pathway toward the job and life that they want to live. But we really need to be intentional about making sure that students with intellectual disability know this is possible, because for so long it was not. And so that a lot of people just still think you can't do it. It's not, that doesn't, if you went to college yourself, or, you didn't see students with intellectual disability, perhaps, unless you just recently graduated. And so we just don't think it's possible. So I'm so glad that you all decided to come to this workshop today. And I urge you to help us in this mission of making sure that people understand that students can go to college and that there are supports and structures in place to assist them to be successful. So it's not just going to college and struggling and trying to do the best you can. There is support and very specific thought put into how to have students have a very successful experience. So the admissions process is going to be different, and the requirements are going to be different to be admitted into one of these programs. There isn't a requirement for a regular high school diploma, for instance. There is not a requirement for an SAT or ACT score. There is not typically an intensive essay requirement. So the kind of things that you might be helping other students work through as they apply for college, this admissions process is going to be different. And the requirements um, tend to structure more on a desire to go to college, an understanding that they're going to work really hard and they are going to go to classes and they are going to work, and that the student is really interested in having the type of experience that this program will provide. Um, and the students do have to have a diagnosis of intellectual disability. That is also a unique kind of aspect of the admissions process. The students are non-degree seeking, so but for all intents and purposes, they still have full student status at the college or university that they're attending. The programs vary in length. I should know the actual percentage, but many are 2-year. A 2-year program is a very common length of program for these, even if they're at a 4-year university. The programs may be 2 years in length. But there are many that are 4 years long, typical, like the same experience as a bachelor's degree student would have. But you can find out the length of those programs in our directory, which I'll tell you about in a second. So they vary in length, um, and they may offer federal student aid. So um, I'm going to talk a little bit about paying, a little more detail about paying for college, because there's a variety of ways. But one of the things the Higher Education Act did was open a pathway to federal student aid for students who were non-matriculating, i.e. non-degree seeking, and did not have a regular high school diploma. Those two requirements were significant barriers for students with intellectual disability to access federal student aid. So these programs that were established, that are being established, can seek approval from the Department of Education to be a certified or an approved comprehensive transition post-secondary program. And once they receive that designation, they're able to offer access to federal student aid for students with intellectual disability who do not have a regular high school diploma and are not matriculating towards a degree. So it removes those barriers. But you can see the parentheses here, the federal aid that those students are eligible for when attending those programs are the Pell Grant, the federal supplemental grant program, and federal work study. They did not offer access to federally subsidized student loan programs for these programs, but they do have access to the Pell Grant, most importantly, that can really help to pay for the cost of college, as you all well know. And many of these programs do offer campus housing, as I mentioned before. So students enroll in college courses, they do internships, they have paid jobs, all of this campus life, independent living, as I mentioned, all of it supported through program staff, as well as what you'll see very commonly, and I think it's a really tremendously positive hallmark of these programs, is the use of peer mentor support. So students are supported by other students who are attending the college or university, sometimes in a very informal kind of social component of just going to games together or participating in lunches together or, just hanging out, all the way to peer mentors who may support them to live more independently in the dorms, who may support them at a job site. So peer mentors, both paid and unpaid, are really a hallmark of these programs. And the ways, and it's one of the key ways that individualized support that I mentioned earlier is being provided. So not only with trained staff, but also with young people their same age who will just be able to support them. And those relationships between the students with and without disability, I mean, we just hear stories over and over and over again about how enriching those relationships are for both members of the team, if you will, both the student with disability and the students without, who find it incredibly valuable experience to be able to support a young person like themselves, get the most out of college. So that's a really, really cool part of these programs as well. So I wanted to share with you and urge you to. We weren't sure the video would show very well in the webinar. Sometimes they don't. But I want you all to promise me you'll take 4 or 5 minutes after this webinar and click on the link that Chelsea just put inside the chat and look at this really cool video. So one of our projects at Think College is to really, as I said, we count on folks like yourselves to help us bang the drum and help us let every kid know with intellectual disability as well as their families. You can go to college if you want to go to college. It's really possible. And you may have heard way too many times that you're not college material or college is not for you and you shouldn't be thinking about it. Well, we want to turn that on its head and we want people to know you can go to college, you can be thinking about it. So our website, thinkhighered.net, has a ton of resources for educators, as well as vocational rehabilitation counselors and a number of other groups that we really wanted to highlight the college possibilities and have them help us share this great news that college is possible. So if you click on this link, you'll immediately see a video that sort of is auto playing on the homepage. Watch that video. It's only 4 minutes long. It includes my friend Martha Haythorne, who you'll recognize her if you were looking at my slides. She's a student who recently graduated um, from Georgia Tech, um, through their certificate program that they have at Georgia Tech. And Martha is the what do you call it? She's the voiceover for the video, which features a lot of other students with intellectual disability talking about going to college, as well as college faculty and parents, just really summarizing the impact that college can make. And it's a great introduction for people who've never heard of this before. So we offer that free access. You can download that video. You can put it on your phone. You can show it at IEP meetings. You can share it with families and other educators. So we hope that you'll find the video as well as the associated guides and resources that are freely downloadable from the website. We hope you'll find those really helpful to share the news that college is for everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kate. Chelsea, did we have any questions?
No, we do not at this time.
All right. Well, let me share with you. This is just a screenshot of our directory. It's called Think College Search, and the link is here on this slide. But if you go to thinkcollege.net, our main website, it's fairly easy to find. There's a big button right on the homepage that takes you to our college search. But this is the only national directory of college programs for students with intellectual disability in the country. And we've been maintaining this for the last 15 years or so, and continue to add programs as they get as they get developed. And we are just about to embark on our annual update, where we ask everybody to all the college programs to look at the information we have and make sure it's up to date. So we strive and we work very hard to try to keep this as accurate and up to date as possible. It's still possible that there are some programs out there that have not yet added themselves to our directory. Um, but we work really hard whenever we hear about it. This is kind of one of my main jobs, and I've developed this and have been managing it for all these years. And so it's really important to me that this be a great resource for families and students. And I can't tell you how happy and pleased and proud it makes me when I hear a student say, "Oh, I never knew I could go to college. And then I found this directory and I saw all the different colleges that have programs, including maybe my dad's alma mater. I didn't know that." That program that I could go to that school, the one that my brother goes to. It's really, really fun and exciting. And so just sharing that this exists is another great way of letting people know in a very concrete way what we're talking about, and what's available. When you go to the page, you can search each program. We have a listing that has a lot of information about each program that you can write about on our website. You can also click and save your favorites and download a spreadsheet of some key features of each of your favorites so that you can begin to compare, which for those of you who work with students choosing colleges, that's really a big part of it, is trying to decide what features matter the most and what's going to be the most important characteristics. And so we strive to be able to offer a tool that will help students make those choices and see the differences. And then we more and more, it used to be not that common, but now almost every one of these programs also has their own website. So we give you a link to their direct website where you can even learn even more. And there's contact information for every single program. So this is a great, rich resource to begin to really dive in, and can be a fun activity for younger students, maybe with, or just didn't even know college was possible. Give them a little assignment to just like go on here and find some schools you might want to go to. And just that gives them like a really concrete way to be introduced to this possibility for themselves that maybe they hadn't really taken very seriously before. And that last thing that you'll see, we do have some commonly asked questions and answers. And we also have a guide to, which includes a ton of different kinds of questions that I wrote this a few years ago with some families and students, and they shared with me the things that they either asked that they knew was really helpful, or questions perhaps that they wish they had asked. And so those questions make up this guide. So that can be a really helpful resource too, to begin to think about these programs and what it might look like for a particular student and what's going to matter to them the most. You can tell Shannon went forward, but you can tell that's one of my favorite fun things that I get to talk about. So I went on and on a little bit, but I do encourage you to take a look. It's really fun to start seeing what colleges, maybe your college that you graduated from has a program that you maybe didn't even know about. This screenshot is also from our website here on the left side of your screen, and this is a page that tries to pull together all the resources around paying for college, because obviously paying for college is one of the primary questions that people ask and worry about when they think about college as a possibility. And for students with intellectual disability, it may even be a more serious or daunting kind of question, because perhaps there is no savings for college if parents never thought about this student maybe being able to go to college. So there may even be fewer savings than other students might have the privilege of having. So there are a number of sources of funding. Some are the same as they are for students without disability. But there are unique sources of funding that can support, such as Medicaid, vocational rehabilitation. There's even been some great efforts certainly in the state of Alabama, as well as other places, to utilize, to be able to have students use the GI Bill to go to college. Um, Social Security has some opportunities. So this page, if you visit it, you can read, you can revisit a webinar that I did when my hair was shorter, that I talked about all the different options for paying for college. I also, as a result of that webinar, created a number, our team created a number of resources for families and students to begin to explore all the different ways that they might be able to get some funding to support them to attend college. So that's a great resource, and it does explain the access to federal student aid, which I know might be of particular interest to you all. But as people who might be familiar with exploring paying for college through a variety of different means, the biggest barrier that we continue to try to overcome related to access to typical um, scholarships, state level scholarships, or those kinds of things that you guys might be aware of. Very often, scholarship programs refer to degree seeking students, but there's been some tremendous progress that has been made trying to open access to those students who are attending these kinds of programs and not earning a degree, but having a really robust, very, very important and impactful college educational experience. So more and more scholarships are sort of modifying their eligibility to include students with intellectual disability who are attending these programs. While they may not be earning a degree, they are earning a meaningful credential from those programs. So that work continues, and we continue to try to work with vocational rehabilitation to recognize the kind of significant impact, as I mentioned earlier, that these programs can have on the employment outcomes of individuals. And so that is, of course, of great interest to vocational rehabilitation, whose main goal is to help people with disabilities get jobs. So um, I point that out as a resource, and certainly offer myself as a person for you to reach back out to if you have any questions about this very important topic of how a student, once they know it's possible, how do they make it financially feasible as well. So this slide just has a couple of QR codes. It takes you to that paying for college page that I just highlighted. And then also a more basic, just a downloadable brief that I wrote on paying for college that has a summary of 10 different ways in which college students with intellectual disability are currently paying for college, 10 different types of resources. My last little bit of time, I just wanted to highlight, to start to get you thinking about what I think is a natural progression. And I've summed it all up in here in about 45 minutes, right? But the progression is knowing that college is possible, you knowing it, then you sharing that with students and families and other educators so that they know it. And then college becomes a possibility. And students start thinking, I think I would like to go to college. That sounds really great. I want to do that. So the next step, then we talked about paying for it. And then the next step is, how do you prepare? And so there are some very specific, a colleague of mine, Dr. Maria Pajawanski, who's fantastic, who works at the Institute for Community Inclusion with me and does a lot of work in transition and runs a transition leadership graduate program. She shared with me this resource that I like to share with other educators. There's expectations that you think about when you think about someone going to college. And then on one side, of course, you see the college expectation. And then on the other side, you see the secondary preparation. So what this provides, and we have a ton more resources for transition into college on our website. This is just one example that I decided to highlight today. Another really, one of my favorite resources we have for transition is a guide that a colleague put together that has, I can't remember how many, maybe 100, like a lot of IEP goals, like specific IEP goals that could be considered to be added to a transition IEP for a student that tie directly to skills that we know help students be more successful in college. So not to belabor each one of these, but I think so this way I hoped that the slide deck itself would be a little bit of a resource for you, that those of you who are interested in the transition and supporting students. But use of public transportation can be a really important thing, or any transportation options that are available for students to focus on that, because getting to and from college, it's kind of nice for the student, and maybe it may even required that there's no yellow school bus, right? And you hope it's not your mom driving you to college every day. So independence in transportation can be kind of a really great way to get ready. Learning about navigating spaces on your own, either through, maybe a step-by-step voice guidance on your phone, learning to use maps, or learning how to ask for help. Um, Free time is a really interesting piece of college, that I think you can be intentional about helping students get better with managing free time, because there is a fair amount of it when you're in college, and it can be daunting for a young person who's never really had the opportunity to figure out what they do with their own time, um, to learn how to do that. Working on understanding their accommodation needs and their modification needs, being able to articulate and maybe speak to that a little bit can be important. And you see other examples too. It's really all about thinking about what the student need to do in college, and how they can start to practice those skills while they're still in high school. This slide and the next just has more examples that I urge you to check out. And I think if you see a theme here, the theme is just becoming a little bit more independent, becoming a little more self-determined, with because students can be, while they're still in high school, they have that opportunities. What their peers in high school are doing is becoming a little bit more independent than maybe they were in elementary school. And we really want to see that happen for students with disabilities as well. So I hope you'll find these ideas helpful. And these are just a few examples, but I bet those of you who work with students in transition, you may think of many, many more ways that students can be empowered to think about themselves as a somewhat independent college student on a college campus. And what would that look like? And how can we help to prepare them for those experiences? So the ideas for IEP goals is here as a QR code, or there's a mini link there that you can go. All of these things are on our website, but I like to provide direct links because our website is fairly dense and has a lot of resources, and sometimes it's hard to find exactly what you're looking for. But that's what I'm here for as well. Like anytime anybody's like, I heard you speak at a webinar and you mentioned this resource. I don't really remember the name of it and I can't find it. We'll work on it together and I'll find it for you. So never hesitate to ask us directly. We have a help desk that is staffed by myself as well as a number of other people who work at ThinkCollege. And we're more than happy to help people find what they need and get it into your hands so that you can help students, because we really count on y'all to do that. And the College and Career Learning Plan is a really cool resource as well that also can guide work during transition. One of the things I really like about it is it has um, the perspective of being person-centered, in that the student decides what are the important goals for themselves. What are they excited about getting more independent in and learning about, based on the kind of skills that we know. This is not disability specific. It's like this college and career skills that every young person needs. And so focusing on those with these students and with a level of intention. So those are two of our probably over 75 resources on transition to college that we share on our website. So as I mentioned, we have a help desk that is operating. Well, we look at it all the time, but obviously our staff works Monday through Friday. So what we have people in all different time zones. So ask us questions there. ThinkCollege TA at umb.edu. It sends a question to our help desk. And the nice thing about this is if I happen to be off or in a meeting, somebody will see it because it's able to be seen by a number of our staff. So we're a resource for you. That's our job. We love to talk to people. We love to help people understand more about post-secondary options for students with intellectual disability. Your parents and families, students, give them our email and they can reach out to us directly with questions as well. So we're here for y'all and we hope that you'll take advantage of us.
Thank you again so very much, Kate. This has just been a wealth of resources and information that I know that all of our educators will be very, very excited about. Chelsea, were there any other questions there in the chat?
Not at this time.
Okay, perfect. Well, Kate, again, thank you so much for the great
I'm glad to know I
information.
was so incredibly clear that y'all don't.
You were great.
I hope that if you think of one in an hour or in a half an hour, you've written down my email and you'll ask me then. It's been a pleasure to speak with y'all, and I really am very, very grateful to Get to College for reaching out to us and for offering us this opportunity to speak to y'all and to get this information out all across Mississippi. We're really delighted by the opportunity.
We are glad to form this new partnership as well. Participants, Chelsea and I were talking to Kate earlier. We met their staff at the National College Access Network and were immediately drawn to what they were doing for students and the resources that they had available. So we got them on the books a little over a year ago to do this presentation because we find it very, very important. And you're going to see in just a minute too, Kate, kind of rounding into what you talked about. Our next Topic Tuesday in February is going to be the Mississippi Department of Rehabilitation Services. And they have lots of great resources. So Kate, you might want to join our next Topic Tuesday.
Yes, I might. I'm going to write a
And
date
hear
down for
from
sure.
it'll be, well, I'll show you the slide in just a second. So, but again, thank you so much. And participants, we will be posting this. We've recorded it and we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel. So if you've enjoyed it today, make sure that you share with your colleagues to go back and watch that on our YouTube channel. So we'll get that on there for you shortly.
Shannon, will I get a copy of that link? Would that be okay?
Sure, I'll be glad to send
Yeah.
it to you.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
awesome. We'll share it on ours
So,
as well.
yeah, so we'll definitely do that. And then we'll also have a Canvas course in the next couple of weeks, maybe, Chelsea, maybe on this. Yeah. Okay. So
Fabulous.
all of those. So just to follow up on what we've got going, there it is, Kate. The Mississippi, we will have the continuation of our spring Topic Tuesday. This was our 6th session of the year of our Topic Tuesday. So stay tuned for our next Topic Tuesday, as we mentioned earlier, which will be on February the 4th. And during that webinar, you'll hear from our representatives from the Mississippi Department of Rehabilitation Services and the supports that they have for students heading to college. I have just become aware myself of all the supports that they offer, and there's a lot of them. And we need to be passing that along to our students in Mississippi. So that's our next one. And then in March, we will be talking about college and career fair planning. And then in April, we'll be talking about advising your students post-affirmative action. And then in May, our topic is going to be supporting student parents. So we'll be continuing this webinar series through the spring. If you participate in 5 webinars, you'll have the opportunity to apply for 0.5 CEUs. And if you participate in all 10 webinars over the fall and spring semesters, you'll have the opportunity to apply for 1 full CEU. The remaining webinars, as we said earlier, are listed here on this on the screen, and they are all on our website under, if you'll go to our website, they're listed under the educator header, and then select Topic Tuesday, and then it will be there under the events section. While you're there registering, please check out all of our other resources for you and your students listed under that educator tab. And then in addition to Topic Tuesday, we have a few more, as we're winding down the semester, training opportunities for educators over the spring. We did a lot of them, of course, back in the fall, but we've got a few opportunities left for that FAFSA 101 training. So on Tuesday, January the 21st, that will be a morning session from 9 to 11:30. And then we'll have opportunity for an afternoon session in February, on February 13th, from 1 o'clock to 3:30 p.m. So that's the FAFSA 101 training. As we know, you are out there with your students, helping them complete that FAFSA. So it's not too late to join in with us and learn kind of the ins and outs of the basics of the FAFSA. Then we will also be hosting the FAFSA 201 training, another session of that on February the 19th from 9 to 11:30. And just remembering that the FAFSA 201 is going to be scenario based, so that we hope that all participants who join in for that FAFSA 201 have either attended the FAFSA 101 either in person or through one of our webinars, because it really will build on that and be scenario based. So we hope you'll get registered for our remaining Topic Tuesdays and our remaining FAFSA training sessions that we have over the spring. So that's all we have for you today. As always, feel free to contact us at any point with your questions. And we do appreciate you joining us today. And we look forward to seeing everyone in February. So thanks so much. And we hope you have a great rest of your week. And thank you again, Kate, for joining us. See you all soon.